Okay, we're going to try this a second time. I've already recorded this once, and apparently I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm having to do it again. So maybe you can hear me now. What we're trying to do today is do a rehash of tariffs. I touched on tariffs a little bit yesterday. I got requests saying that, hey, are tariffs bad? I thought they were bad. We've been taught in school that tariffs are bad. That is not true. We're going to go in specifically about why tariffs are not inflationary. They're not. I'll prove it. Two, they're not going to wreck the economy. The economy is doing just fine. Other things are going to wreck the economy though, but it's not going to be tariffs. And then three, what's the big deal? Why is Trump using tariffs? Why are tariffs even being considered? So we're going to go through those three primary reasons of tariffs being pretty good, at least for the United States. Also, it is Friday. Everybody should be wearing their Hawaiian shirt. It's Hawaiian Shirt Friday. I'm making that a thing. I don't care. Todd, sit down. It is Hawaiian Shirt Friday. Get over it, Todd. So, with that being said, we're going to go look at tariffs. So right now, I'm sure everybody saw that tariffs are now back in place. If you did not watch the stream yesterday, which I'm sure you didn't because I'm brand new, go watch the stream yesterday. I called that this was going to happen. This is going to go before SCOTUS because that's the goal. They're setting this up to go before SCOTUS because this court had no authority to do what they did, and they knew that it'd get appealed, they knew it'd get overturned, and then it would go before SCOTUS. That was the goal, and that's what's going to come into question. All been set up, called this, just shocked that it happened within 24 hours. Go Pam Bondi, and good on the appellate court to say, no, this is retarded. I'm sorry, I'm saying the R word. Get over it. And this needs to be backed up. So let's get into the primary conversation today. Your mama didn't raise no fool. Tariffs are pretty cool. So tariffs have been claimed to be increasing inflation. I want to note right now, look at where we are from where we were during the horrible years under the Biden administration under tariffs. And something to note about under inflation, inflation is cumulative. If you've got 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%, that does not mean that you've been factoring in 2% inflation. That means that every year that 2% gets compounded by 2%. What was it, Einstein that said the greatest power, whatever, one of the most powerful things in the universe is compound interest? Inflation is compound interest. It's taking away your purchasing power of your dollar, compounding it annually every year. That's why this 7 and 6% doesn't sound so bad initially. I mean, it's not good, but they compound upon each other, and it makes it worse. We all know inflation is not 20%, and we're not going to go in how they manipulate CPI and make it seem like it's not as bad as it really is, where you're trading out brand goods for non-branded goods or generics and trying to make it seem like, oh, look, they can still buy the things that they usually buy, so inflation's not really that bad. But that's not what I was purchasing. I was purchasing X. You're saying I'm now going to purchase Y. I don't want to purchase Y. I want to purchase X. So they cheated. I know that. The point is, even if you have a crooked measuring stick, you at least know the consistency of that measuring stick. So we have to use what we have. So note, there's been no serious increase in inflation due to tariffs. Yearly, yes, I know. You didn't hear that. My name is Mouthy. Mouthy, that's yearly. Yes, I know. The point is the issue is what we're looking at right now. So if we break this down and look much, much closer, where's the tariff inflation? Where is it? Where's the tariff inflation? I don't see that. It's huge tariff inflation. I don't see it because it's not happening. That's not how tariffs work. Tariffs are a one-time gotcha on foreign nations that are importing into the United States. Does it increase prices? Yes, but we're going to look at it and it's not going to impact you as much as you think it does. However, the benefits far outweigh the damage that they're going to do to the prices. Do they increase prices? Yes. But inflation is a consistent price increase. Tariffs are a one-time deal. Now, they can be inflationary. Not saying they're not. They can be inflationary if you do not have resources and ability to produce. We have both of those things. Because we can take those items that are being produced overseas, use resources internally, and produce them here, Therefore, tariffs are not inflationary. Now, if we did not have one of those two things, then yes, they could be inflationary. But since we have both resources and availability of production, they're not inflationary. You fight me, liberal. They're not. And we're going to get into why. So let's look at it. One, liberal, where is it? Where's your inflation? I'm waiting. We're waiting. Oh, sorry. I just had to throw this in everybody's face because this is what it was under Biden. This is where we were, which was nice when we had dollars that actually, you could go to the grocery store and pick up a few things for under $50. And now those same things that you pick up now cost $100. It's ridiculous. We're all hurting here. But to get back to tariffs, if you look at where we are here, so this is personal income month over month. So notice personal income is still increasing. Now, just a note, just because personal income increases, that is not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. The point is that it's still increasing. They were saying that this was going to completely decimate people and they weren't going to be able to buy anything. It's going to hurt the economy. But if that were true, then how come personal income is continuing to increase? If you look back over multiple months hence, this is multiple years of data, I believe about 3 years of data under the Biden administration, it's been pretty much flat other than this outlier here. The reason why it's been flat is because essentially you have inflation gobbling up all those increases. So until you get an increase that breaks out beyond inflation, you're actually losing every single dollar that you're gaining from any salary increase you've been getting. So if inflation's 5% and you get a 2% raise, guess what? You actually got 3% inflation. You're welcome. So just note this steady trend of increases since Trump has come into office. That's what you want to see. That's a good thing. This has nothing to do with tariffs. This has everything to do with inflation. What the media is trying to do is spin your head away from looking at what Trump's been doing good about inflation and bringing it down, which they said that he wasn't going to be able to do, to trying to get you to pivot to tariffs to say, oh, well, now tariffs are going to bring down everything. No, they're not. They're just trying to stop you looking at the pretty picture over here and try to look up this fake narrative that they're building over here. So let's break it down. One, just showed you don't see any increases in inflation. Two, let's look at what's actually going to be doing to the economy. So personal consumption expenditures. This is just showing that there's not really any big change right now. So if we're looking right here, it's staying consistent. People are still buying. People are still, going out and spending. The wheels are continuing to turn. In fact, if you go ask them, those same people that are saying the world is on fire and it's going to burn down, ask them about GDP. And they will still say that GDP is perfectly fine, because we're going to get into that. Sorry, I thought that was next. It's not. Another thing to look at is we're continuing to see increases in imports of goods and services. So even with the tariffs, it hasn't stopped the imports. Now, some very astute people will point out that, well, you're seeing a huge increase because they're trying to get items in before businesses are trying to get items in before the tariffs go into effect. Perfectly legitimate pushback. Totally agree that could be the case. But the point is, since last year, you're still seeing a huge increase. And I think that has to do more to do, because if you see right here, there's a little plateau. I was working on this earlier because I was talking to myself apparently and not you guys. So notice here, this is the initial increase. And then you're seeing this bump. You could argue that that little blip right there is indeed from people trying to get stuff into the country before the tariffs go into effect. But this initial bump, you cannot argue that. That is everybody seeing regime change and saying that we're now in a much better business climate. Same thing with dollars. You can argue that as well. Totally get it. Legitimate concern. This, though, sorry, I win, you lose. So the bigger issue that people are worried about, and we touched on this yesterday. If you did not see yesterday's stream, go watch it. It has more to do with the overarching issue with the international court basically usurping their supposed authority and expanding their scope and just totally throwing the baby out with the bathwater with what they're supposed to be doing. What they're supposed to be doing is taking a look at a phone and saying, oh, look, here's this phone. There's a chip in here from Japan. We're supposed to be charging 10% tariffs on Japanese chips, and it was manufactured in China, so we're supposed to be charging 50% increase on anything that's manufactured in China. What's the actual percentage of tariff that needs to be going onto that device? That's what it's supposed to be for. It's figuring out what the actual tariff should be on a good that is complex, or whether or not it falls under certain tariffs. That is what they're supposed to be doing. So if we actually look at where the cost of something's impacting us, let me grab a color you can see. If you look at the average median car cost of $33,800, let's say again tariffs on steel and what Trump's looking to do on steel itself. The actual components of the car, as far as how much made up of raw steel and whatnot, is about 4% or $1,300. That's where you're going to see the tariff is at $1,300, not 25 to 50% on the actual $33,000 item. That would be awful. If you look at that, 25% broken down would be about $300 or so. 50%, you're looking at closer to $700. What does that mean? That means totally you're only seeing approximately 1 to 2% increase on that type of good. That's not what you actually pay. What do you actually pay? You generally pay about half that, because most companies are not going to take the entire price that they're incurring and throw it onto the consumer. They still have to compete in the market. They would have to collude with everybody else, and everybody else would have to say, hey, we're going to all charge the consumer everything. Nobody's going to do that, because that would mean whoever doesn't do that is going to start gaining market share. That's what the beauty of competition. So by everybody basically trying to win your dollar, they're all going to do their best to limit the amount of cost that is then transferred to the consumer. Pretty sweet, right? So that means realistically, you're only going to see about a 1% increase in those costs of those type of goods when you're seeing a large tariff like that 50% tariff on steel. Now, on smaller goods where you're saying, okay, everything that's coming in must be taxed like 10%. So if you look at something like a spatula, then yeah, you could see a 10% increase on that spatula of, 50 cents or so. So yes, that type of good where it's a monolith type thing, it's plastic, it's being stamped out, and it's only coming from one country, and it's 10% universal tariffs. Yes, you could see that 50% increase there on that junk good coming in, a 50-cent increase. So now you're probably wondering, well, what is that 50 cents buying me? Or what is that $700 on that Toyota Camry buying me? Let's take a look. So one of the things that were being noted, and let me erase this because I've got to do it over again, is GDP. So these last few here are estimates of what the GDP could be in 2025. Notice something about every single one of those estimates. They're positive. But wait, I thought tariffs were going to destroy the economy and country. They're not. So why would they be putting that? Because they're not sure exactly how much bang for buck the tariffs are going to actually do to the country. For example, let's say that 1% that we're going to be impactful for every single consumer is going to reduce, and again, we're extrapolating here. We're doing the best we can with the data we have. We have to make some assumptions. So let's say that 1% increase on everything is going to reduce GDP by 1%. It won't, but let's say it does. Then that would mean on the low end of the GDP, minus 1%, you're still seeing a 0.4% increase. And I know there are some people that are blowing their heads up saying you can't do that. I know you can't do that in a technical sense, but we're rationalizing here what we have. A 1% price increase, universally speaking, on everything, and looking at it that way as far as what could impact GDP. We have to go with the numbers we have. If it's a legitimate concern that we're increasing prices approximately by 1% on most durable large goods, and therefore it's going to reduce the effect spending on the GDP by approximately 1%, then it would be technically 1% of that 1.4%, but let's give the liberals their due, okay? Let's say it's going to impact at a 1-to-1 ratio and legitimately pull the entire country out of GDP by 1%. It's not going to do that, but I'm showing you, for instance, let's say it would. It's not. We're still in a good spot. So we're still saying that the country's still going to increase by 0.4% all the way up to 2.8%. Because if we subtract over here, or realistically, it's going to impact us, anywhere from 1%. Pick a number, liberal, 50%. Then it's going to impact that GDP number by that amount, which of course it's not going to do. So we're still sitting pretty. All this screaming with chickens cut head off on fire talk that's been going around is doing absolutely nothing but trying to divert from the fact that Trump has controlled inflation and has reduced energy prices, and that's going to cause big wins for the entire country. But instead, the media and the liberals are doing the best they can to look for anything negative, and it's just not going to happen. You're going to continue to see strong growth throughout 2025. That's not to say we're going to have some hiccups. We will, but in the long term, things are going to get really good. Let's see how good. So there's been over $5 trillion, and I don't think you guys realize how much money that is. So scrolling back up to our GDP, 5 trillion is a whole block of this. So imagine, pick one of these blocks on, and let's just go ahead and add up a whole block here. So again, that's if they invested all at once, which we know that's not going to happen. It's going to be over multiples of years. But regardless, let's say they're going to do, 10% of that. They're going to do $500 billion. $500 billion is still no joke. $500 billion is going to be phenomenal. That's going to add a ridiculous amount to the GDP. It's probably going to, I don't know, off balance the tariffs. So instead of all that money being paid overseas to overseas workers and overseas manufacturing, but instead being produced here, like it's offsetting all that money that was going out overseas is now coming back here. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. Just saying. And then notice the 90% of countries plan to reshore. Again, that's approximate, but still that's a survey, and we have to go with what we have with the surveys. Regardless of whether or not it's 90%, we know it's going to be high. Because again, that's what the tariff is doing. The tariff is legitimately making people saying, are you willing to take the risk of offshoring overseas or bringing everything back onshore to the United States? And frankly, it's just better to do it here. People want it here. It's easier here. It's closer to the actual consumer. It makes more sense. And when that happens, you're going to see more people being hired here. And when that happens, more money is going to be kept here. To all you Keynesian economics out there that like to talk about money velocity, there you go. You should like tariffs. That's the problem with you liberals. You hold two diametric opposing views and you can't pick one. So, again, notice here, 54% of U.S. firms say they'll raise prices. Think about that. They're saying that half of all companies are going to raise prices. That means that the other half are not. Kind of like our 1 to 2% rule, where you're talking about realistically, it's going to be closer to 0 to 1% as far as the impact of the prices on something like a large good, like a complex good, like a Toyota Camry. That's phenomenal, guys. You don't understand. Think about that from an outsider's perspective as far as how much additional monies are coming into the U.S., how many additional jobs it's going to create, how much additional product and money and velocity that's going to generate here in the U.S. It's a game changer. All the stagnation and damage we've seen over the last 4 years, it's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be some pain. I get it. I'm with you guys. I've been through that pain. I'm going through that pain. Why do you think I'm here with you? We got to do something. And so this is a good step in the right direction. Budget surplus, again, the big thing that some people like to tout, including Trump himself, is that, oh, look, we're raising a bunch of money via tariffs. That's not the real goal. Sure, it's going to raise some money, but the real goal is to bring jobs back here so it generates more income here, so it creates a better outcome for U.S. middle class here. We're going to talk about labor availability here in a moment because this is an interesting chart. I love this. Over the past year, notice all of a sudden a huge jump in the amount of people employed. What happened in December to January, I wonder? I don't know. Yeah, sure you do. Another thing to note here, this is awesome. I'm going to leave that red line there. I like my red line. So while this is the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate has continued to increase. Wait a minute, Ryan. You're showing me a chart here where we have way more people working
going from December to January, but the unemployment rate's increasing. Why is that? Great question. That's because more people are being forced off to federal aid and they're getting off their butts, they're getting out of their mom's basement, and they're going back to work. So labor participation is going up, which is also increasing unemployment rate. You get it? More people are finally saying, hey, I need to start participating and get back to work and get in there and start making some money and moving forward instead of sitting on my mom's couch. Zers, I get it. It's awful right now. We'll totally get into purchasing power parity. It's awful. Boomers can. We'll get into the whole boomer versus millennial versus Zer. We can do that if we get some requests. The point that we need to make right now is that people now realize that the jobs are coming back, that it's beginning to look better, and you might be wondering, well, where are those jobs going? I'm glad you asked. So this is, what was this? This is labor participation, showing that labor participation has beginning to increase. And again, it kind of took a nosedive right there, but it's shot right back up. And I think you'll continue to see this increase because, again, it just shot up there. So there's some sort of issue here between the data. But the main part here is that you see a huge jump in the number of people that have now gone back to work. And that's phenomenal. And the best part is, where is the manufacturing going? So notice here, this is percent change. So this is how manufacturing's been doing. We know manufacturing's been going out, outsourced, overshored, outshored, gone shored. It's a fugazi, out the window. You're not getting manufacturing jobs here. But all of a sudden in January, we're seeing a trend. Why is that? Why are we not only a trend? Why are we seeing an upward progression of this trend? I thought tariffs were going to completely obliterate and destroy everything. It's almost like people realize that there's been a huge paradigm shift where now it's going to be a much better climate for jobs, for producing, for creating here in America. I dare say we might have a manufacturing base coming back, because I would like to get off that one-legged stool of consumerism and create a manufacturing base. Wouldn't you? I certainly would. New orders. So this is supposedly like one of the biggest things about how to gauge manufacturing and how manufacturing is doing. So here's what I want to showcase, if I can get some of this out of the way, is a huge bump right here. Where did that come from? I thought the tariffs are going to absolutely obliterate everything. That seems like a pretty good look. We're going along. Oh my goodness, look at that wall. That's a huge increase. It's almost like people are having to start generating new manufacturing orders here in the United States because manufacturing coming back, the tariffs are actually working, and we're going to start producing here in the United States. Sounds like a good deal to me. Not only that, the biggest risk per that survey that companies had was the biggest issues being supplier issues, which again is how do you get the parts, supplies, and whatnot, because right now you've got to get them overseas, but you want to start producing them here in the U.S., and then guess what? You need the people. So good job, people who have now gotten out of your mom's basement and decided to go get a job. Fantastic. Keep doing it. Show the businesses that the American is willing to get out there and work, because we are. We're hungry. We want the jobs. We want them to come back here, and we want to just keep knocking it out of the park. Because I tell you guys, if we're able to keep those tariffs on and able to, this is over 3 years, so to show you that this wasn't just a fluke of this past year, this is the same chart, but over the entire Biden administration, and that's a pretty good angle. That's a pretty good angle. I like that hockey stick. Yeah, that's a win. So hang in there, guys. It's been a tough 4 years. It's not going to get any easier. It will get better, but these things take time. The U.S. is like a gigantic ship. You don't turn it on a dime. You can't turn it on a dime. It takes time. So as we go full steam forward and just change that rudder, it's going to slowly drift in a better direction, and it will take time. I'm not saying Trump's perfect. I'm definitely not a huge fan of the government. But some of the things that are happening regarding tariffs are going to be making a dent, provided we hang in there and we let the system play out. The system is the system, and if you make it difficult for businesses to offshore, but make it easier for them to reshore and invest in Americans and create jobs, guess what they're going to do? They're going to take the path of least resistance. They will produce here. They will generate jobs here, and we will see a middle class be made whole. I would love to see that. I know you guys would love to see that. Come on, liberals. Make it make sense. Come on. I'm listening right here. Come on. You got nothing. Well, guys, I'm going to log off here. This is great. This has been another in-depth dive. I'm going to start breaking things out into in-depths and the overarching stuff, because I've had reports of people liking the in-depth and then also liking the overarching. So we'll try to space those out. If anybody has some suggestions, let me know on how to space those out. But we are done, and I'll check you later.